Hello, this is Jeremy Garola, and I'll be presenting the PowerPoint of the Immoral Black Mother. The thesis of this PowerPoint is the negative light that black mothers receive due to stereotypes and social factors that paint black mothers as incompetent, dominating, and sometimes abusive. The method of study on this issue is exploring the impact of youth violence, social factors, and neighborhoods in which they live, how they have affected the way they are seen as mothers, and how they act as mothers. The use of life history interviews was very important to this study because we can hear exactly how the mothers feel and what has happened in their life to make them think certain ways. The population focus for the study is low-income single black mothers of all ages living in decaying urban communities. Social conditions that lead black mothers to marginalized positions. The four main factors are the economy, education, infrastructure, and policing. Some examples of how each factor marginalizes black mothers is the economy. The economy can marginalize black mothers due to the lack of living wage jobs that a single mother can get while raising children on her own. Education. Education levels among black mothers can be a marginalizing factor because most jobs paying a living wage require a college education or a degree in some kind of trade, and that some others can't get because they're taking care of children and don't have time to do that as well. Infrastructure. Infrastructure such as freeways can be marginalizing because it can cut off black mothers and other community members from resources that would help them further themselves and help further grow their children. These resources that can be cut off are like schools, libraries, parks, community centers, and other resources that would really benefit having in the community. And policing. The police have a marginalizing effect on black mothers because they are viewed as targeting the black mothers, young men, or women, so their children, and that makes the mothers worried about someone trying to take their children away from them. So how does food, desserts, play a part in marginalizing mothers of color? Infrastructure occurring towards mothers of color leading to a lack of access or resources which create food deserts that cause marginalization. This is because mothers physically cannot provide their children with sufficient meals, adding on to the stereotype affecting black mothers. Low-income communities also do not have access to affordable, healthy foods. Children are being fed affordable, unhealthy foods such as processed or frozen foods, candy, and other unhealthy items that are just quick and easy to feed instead of making more nutrient-balanced food. This goes on to affecting the children and their nutritional health in the present and in future. How does policing black mothers hinder their ability to parent? Policing black mothers hinders the ability for them to parent because they're too worried about the police hurting or taking away one of their children to call the police and receive services they really need. Mothers are apprehensive to call police because they're scared about what might happen after seeing so many cases of police misuse of force on black people. Mothers are trying to stay away from social services like child protection services, social workers, probation officers, police officers, and other government agencies because they view them as trying to separate themselves and their children and are not getting benefits from these programs like they should be. And the feelings of always being watched due to those agencies has created an increase in anxiety, stress, and feeling unsafe in their own neighborhoods among a lot of black mothers. So the rhetoric surrounding young black men. The rhetoric goes as men are vulnerable to societal abuse and women have had more opportunity than they. This rhetoric is common among men because they feel like they have less opportunities available to be truly vulnerable in society. This can affect men's self-esteem. Men who feel their masculinity is at risk would rather suffer in silence rather than seek help from social services or from friends. They'd rather tough it out alone. Men are stereotyped as troublemakers and risks to society, and this creates another troubled rhetoric. So how is this harmful to young men? The rhetoric is harmful to young men because it harbors the idea that black men are more vulnerable to abuse from society and are judged unfairly. This creates a narrative of black men not being held to the same expectations of women. This is harmful to the men because it gives them a scapegoat to blame things on society or to blame things on women as they are not treated in their eyes fairly as they are. And black men also are in a culture that does not accept them to be vulnerable and tells them they need to man up, which is not good for their mental health or their self-esteem because it does not allow them to explore and let out their true emotions and feelings. And so how is this rhetoric harmful to young women? This rhetoric is harmful because the way that the women are portrayed throughout black culture is having more opportunities than males is harmful to women because this is not giving them credit for their accomplishments, and it is just taking away from everything that they have accomplished in their life, and because it is seen as being easier to be a woman in black culture. The other harmful thing it does to women is make people belittle their struggles because they have an easier time because of their gender. The rhetoric also is harmful to women because they experience a lot of the same hardships as men and are told to suck it up because they have better opportunities in society, but they are also expected to shield and protect their children from those same experiences and have them grow up and not be affected by it when they're still struggling and still having to go through the experiences for two people now because they're taking care of themselves and their children. So how does living in a decaying urban community complicate mothering? By not being able to go to or use public amenities, the mothers will more likely have a hard time in having to find another resource to keep them alive and safe. And some examples of that would be no public transportation means that having to walk in dangerous neighborhoods and have a higher chance of being robbed, kidnapped, raped, and etc. So a bigger chance of becoming the victim to crimes in their neighborhoods. Another example would be the after-school programs being cut due to budget funding, and this can lead to their kids hanging out in the streets and hanging with bad role models for them because the mother can't afford to send them to daycare or have somebody watch them after school while they're busy at work or busy elsewhere. The final example would be food pantries that help mothers provide nutrition for their children. Food pantries are normally ran by schools, and if schools cannot afford to help mothers get better nutrition for their children, then who will? And they're just going to have to eat unhealthy foods. So why do many of the black women in Raichi's study feel powerless as mothers? They feel powerless because of a lack of social support, symbolic fear, and persistent economy decay. So some examples of this would be cutbacks on facilities that help low-income families, so they are no longer getting benefits or help with trying to raise their children and make a living, so they're living in bad conditions. And another example would be schools being dangerous to the extent metal detectors must be used before entering the premises. So the fact that children and young adults have to go through metal detectors before entering a school which is supposed to be a safe place is reinforcing a negative rhetoric of young black men being dangerous and harmful to society. So that is going to wrap up this presentation, and I hope you have learned from it.